In this tutorial, we'll show you how to define your financial counterpart in a transfer of equity share of revenues agreement. This type of contract is usually signed with investors and/or co-producers. Start by filling in the basic information of your contract. Then, in the grant of rights frame of your contract page, indicate that your agreement is a transfer of equity share of revenues contract. If you have any trouble completing these first steps, have a look at our other tutorials or FAQs. Here is your contract once you've defined your rights. Now, let's look at the financial terms frame of the page. Some agreements are only binding once a certain set of conditions, called condition precedents, have been satisfied. You can add such condition precedents to your contract simply by clicking on the plus button in the condition precedents subframe. Then, by clicking on the empty text box, you'll make a pop-up appear. Here, you can indicate the name of your condition precedent, the receipt of a particular agreement for instance, and indicate the date upon which you expect it to be satisfied. This will automatically create an event in your film calendar. That way, you'll be informed when the deadline for that condition precedent approaches. The date can be known for certain or relative to another event, in which case you can choose that event and specify how long before or after the condition has to be satisfied. Click on Save and the condition will appear in the list. Once it is satisfied, simply check the box on the far right, and when all the boxes are checked, Movie Chainer will tell you that the contract is fully enforceable. To add another condition precedent, click the plus button and repeat the steps we've just been through. Now, let's move to the financial part of the deal. In the financial terms frame, click on Split of Revenues. Movie Chainer processes the information you filled in the grant of rights frame and breaks it down territory by territory and media by media. Click on the territory and media for which you want to define the financial terms. On the right-hand side, you can see the different revenue bases for the film, from gross receipts to net profits. If you've already allocated a share of the revenues to the other parties of your contract, that share of revenue will appear as a block of color. On the left-hand side, in the gray area surrounded by the dotted line, you can see the revenues that have to be allocated to your financier, the equity share of revenues. To define this element, simply drag and drop it on the proper revenue basis. If the revenue granted to a financier is based on the net receipts of the film, all you need to do is drag and drop the box on the net receipts basis. If your agreement is a bit different, don't worry, you can drag and drop the box on the adequate revenue basis. In the pop-up, indicate which share of revenues is to be allocated to your financier. Let's take the example of a financier who is granted a 50% corridor on net receipts until his $100,000 investment is recouped, who then gets a 25% corridor until he recoups a $10,000 bonus, and then gets a 5% perpetuity corridor after that. Click on the plus button to add a threshold. On the first line, choose investment recoupment, and then on the right, type 50%. On the second, select equity share of receipts equals, and then type 110,000 in the first box, 25 in the second, and then write 5 in the last line, and don't forget to save. You'll see 3 blocks of color appear on the right side of the page. The first one represents the share of revenues granted to your financier while he recoups his investment. The second represents the share of revenues granted to him while he collects his bonus. The third one represents his share of revenues in perpetuity, which is also called a backend. You're done. All the financial terms for your contract have been saved. We hope this tutorial has been helpful. Thank you for using Movie Chainer.